I moved back from Dublin to Shannon in 1985, and Seamus, my husband, came down in 1987. Now, we bought a site here in Drumline, and we had a house built, and we moved in here in July 1988. Now, we got local builder, an excellent builder, and we had an architect, engineer, the whole lot, because we knew little or nothing about houses and house building, so we handed it over to the experts, and we were extremely pleased with everything, and we were very happy. This was our house, and it was going to be our house for until we kicked the bucket, whenever that would be. But we reared our children here, and we were very happy here. But unfortunately, the last number of years, well, first of all, just to give you a little bit of background, I took early retirement as school principal in Shannon. I took early retirement because I was advised by my medical people, doctors, I had cancer, and I took early retirement. And the advice from the medical profession at the time was, Mary, you're in a very stressful job, you have a huge school, etc., etc. And I have to say, I actually enjoyed every minute of my teaching career, and especially my principalship in Shannon. And to be honest, I didn't know what stress was when I was teaching until 2 years ago, when I discovered that the house that we had spent every penny we had in, mortgage paid, everything done, and next thing we notice all these cracks appearing. Now, prior to that, I would say every 2 to 3 years we would have got the house painted and the whole lot. But in 2019, I noticed quite a few cracks out the back, and I was told by my QS, who had been involved here for years with us and did all the work for me initially. He said, oh, settlement cracks, and all of that. So we got an engineer to have a look, and it was settlement cracks. So we noticed then that not only were there cracks outside, in the back of the house, but cracks appeared here in the gable end. And we decided we won't do any painting at the moment. We will get somebody to come and look after this. So I got a structural engineer who came out, had a look at it, and he said, Mary, it's more than cracks. It is not settlement cracks. It looks very like as you have either pyrite or mica in this house. Now, I was quite shocked. And if doctors had spoken to me about stress being a school principal, I can guarantee you the stress for the past 2 years has been absolutely unbelievable. We have had nothing but false promises, and more false promises from politicians telling us everything would be fine. And quite honestly, this has been nothing but an absolute nightmare particularly since March of 2020, when we were all working from home. I do a lot of interviews and that sort of thing in the education world, and I work here in the study, and I noticed these huge cracks here, because up to then I hadn't even time to sit down and look around. And quite honestly, I was shocked when I saw those, but I was more shocked when my son, who was living next door, came across one day and said, Ma'am, there's a huge crack all the way from the roof down to the ground. And I said, I know, that's only the settlement cracks. And he said, no, this is totally different. It's a big wide crack. So we had a look at it, and sure, then not only was there one big crack going from the roof down to the ground, but there were many cracks and web-like cracking at the gable end, and then the same in the back. So we employed a structural engineer who is a qualified IS 465 engineer. We got him to come have a look at the house, and he told us that we were in serious trouble, and it looked as if we had either pyrite or mica. And he did a visual inspection, but he did tell us that we would need to have core sampling done. Now, quite honestly, I thought my house was the only house in County Clare that had a problem like this. And to be truthful, I was quite embarrassed. I thought it was something that was wrong with my house and the building of my house, even though I can honestly say that we had an excellent builder who came with huge references and did a fantastic job. But we then discovered it really had nothing to do with the builder. It was obviously with defective concrete blocks that were used in the building of the house. So as look at it, I thought I was the only person that had a problem like this, but as look at it, I just happened to buy the local paper and spotted that there was a lady also in North Clare, it said in the paper, in North Clare, who had similar cracking in her house. Since then, we have had our house core sampled, and we got an expert from an engineer from Mayo who came down, and he pointed out, showed where the cracks were and where the core sampling should be done, and we had the core sampling done. There were 8 samples taken from this house, and each and every one of the core samples had pyrite in them, and we got that result back in May of last year. In August of last year, the minister, in the meantime I contacted all the politicians in the county council, the local councillors. I contacted the TDs and senators, and I invited them all to come and have a look at my house, and Dr. Cleary was here as well, and other people who had come forward and admitted that they had a problem. And it was very sad in one sense that so many people in Clare were afraid, like I was initially, they were afraid to say they had a problem with their houses. They felt it was a reflection on them or on whatever. But it was great to see over 50 or 60 people came down here to have a look at my house, and all the politicians came, and the Minister for Housing came to Clare on the 27th of August last year. We invited him to come here to see my house, which he did, and he guaranteed us that in a matter of weeks Clare would be admitted into this defective concrete block grant scheme, as they have in Mayo and Donegal. Now that was the 27th of August, and it is now the month of April, almost the end of April, and we haven't seen or heard since. We are not in any defective concrete block scheme, and we are awaiting that. Now there are other issues as well. The local property tax is an issue for us as well here in County Clare. Our houses have pyrite, but apparently we're not entitled to an exemption, even though we were told by politicians that we were, because we're not in the defective concrete block grant scheme. Now, our house is worthless. My house, which would have been worth about 490,000, 500,000 a few years ago, is now worth 0. And I had a country surveyor here and asked him how much would it cost me to demolish the house, my house, because it was in such a state, will have to be demolished. It is in category 4. It will be demolished. It needs to be demolished. So it's going to cost us between 30 and 50,000 to get the house demolished. But we have no grant scheme in Clare. Well, what I always thought was going to be my dream home that I put in, or Seamus and I put in so much money into this house, and we did everything we could to make it a nice, happy, pleasant, comfortable home for our children, and as we thought, for our grandchildren. Now when I drive in the front gate of my house, all I see are cracks and a pile of rubble. I have lost, to be honest, all interest in the house, because it doesn't feel like my home anymore. I just feel that this lump of rubble will have to be cleared out, and I will have to start all over again. My interest in the house has just waned. I would just prefer now if the whole thing just disappeared overnight. I didn't think I'd be starting afresh again. Now, but that's the way it is, and we just have to get on, I suppose, and keep going and help the younger people as well. I don't have forever to rebuild and do all of the things that will have to be done. But I have some of my past pupils who are living very close by, and they are in their 30s. They have children, they have huge mortgages, and they're phoning me and they're calling up here to see me and to see my house and asking me to call down to see them. And I go to see their houses and I see exactly the same in their houses. They are absolutely devastated, and some of them have repainted the houses because they couldn't face in every evening after work looking at all these cracks and whatever. But, you know, I say to them, well, at least you'll be around to see your next house being built when and if the minister and the department extend the grant to County Clare. I just feel so sorry for the young people, but I equally feel so sorry for myself and my husband and people my age group, and there are quite a lot of people in this area in their 60s and 70s, and God, there are some of them in their 80s. My son has built a house literally next door, and he's now married with 3 small children. And the funny thing is, the little kids, I have 2 little granddaughters and a grandson, but the 2 older children, they come across every day, and every so often they say, they don't call me Granny, they call me Goggy, and they say, is your house going to fall down? I found another crack in the back of your house today. And they go round and they walk around the house and they say, but could the roof fall down some night when we're having a sleepover? And I have to reassure them, no, that's not going to happen, you know. And deep down, I'm saying to myself, well, you don't know, Mary, whether that's going to happen or not, because who knows? My house has deteriorated. Even since the minister was here last August, I have counted 16 new cracks on the outside, and my little grandchildren go around, very regularly, and they come in, they say, oh, you have another crack, there's another crack in your house. And then, is that going to happen to our house? It is terrible to think, and I've spoken with other people, and we're retired now, and this was to be a time that we could enjoy the house, we could enjoy our home, our grandchildren could be popping over and back, enjoy their little sleepovers. And then all of a sudden, like, you hear things like, is the house going to fall in, Granny? When is it going to fall? You know, and quite honestly, I've heard other grannies saying exactly the same thing about their grandchildren. They can't have their children for sleepovers because they're actually petrified, because their houses, some of them, are a lot worse than my house. But at the same time, those little kids, their memory now of their granny's house is going to be the house with all the cracks. But the thoughts now of having to start all over again, whenever that will begin, I mean, I don't have 20 years or 30 years to plan what am I going to do next. I need this house to be, if it is to be demolished, it has to be demolished. When it's demolished, it has to be done soon, sooner rather than later. And as I said to the minister, if we don't get the grant soon, then I will be 6 foot under before anything happens. Isn't that something to be thinking about? Imagine thinking about that. And the inheritance to my children is a lump of rubble that's worthless. In fact, it's more than worthless. It is minus 50,000 of our own house, the way we wanted it, everything that our children needed and our grandchildren. And here we are now with nothing. And that's the reality. It's worthless, but unfortunately, whoever inherits it, if we don't get the grant soon, if we're not around, it's going to cost them 30 to 50,000 to demolish it. There are regulations, and blocks are supposed to be tested and all of that. We thought that everything was 100% perfect. Now we discover that the blocks that were put into this house contained at least 1 mineral, pyrite. The government were supposed to oversee all of this. There was no regulation, because obviously there was no regulation, because up this road, down the road from here, all over this parish of Newmarket and Fergus, Shannon, 6 Mile Bridge and Cratloe, there are houses crumbling. And I was very disappointed when some of our TDs were speaking with the minister, and they were speaking with the Taoiseach in the Dáil. They brought questions to them, and they literally were quite dismissive. And I said, oh yeah, you know, you'll get into the scheme, like, you know, the minister is dealing with it. Well, the minister promised me in my kitchen, when he said to me, oh yeah, you've a lovely house, and it's a shame the way it has gone, you know. It is a shame, Minister. It is a big shame, a huge shame. And it's a reflection on consecutive governments who didn't regulate the building industry. Or I'm not talking about builders, I'm talking about suppliers. And now it's up to the government to remedy or make up to all the people in County Clare that have defective concrete blocks in their homes, and there are hundreds, if not thousands of them.